Hi, this is Gautam. For today's episode, we're going to look at this book, Leopard Diaries by Sanjay Gubbi. If you're interested in books on environment, do look at the description for the playlist. Well, this is one of the few books in which you may not be in a position to simply understand or simply guess the content of the entire book in the first two chapters. Because if you read only the first two chapters, you might think this book is simply a description or an FAQ. Because the first two chapters technically deal with the biological aspects and the social aspects of the leopards, how beautiful the animal leopard is, what are its biological characteristics, where do they thrive, how does a leopard match when compared to a jaguar, how does it share the ecosystem with a tiger, what are the different types of subspecies within the leopard. But the beauty is, apart from giving these FAQs and those basics on biology in the first two chapters, author Sanjay Gubbi does a terrific job of bringing together his on-field experience and his years of conservation work in the remaining chapters, where both the biological aspects and the conservation aspects associated with the leopard blend together. So technically you can say, even though the book is not strictly divided into two parts, there are two segments within the book, not exactly chronologically written. That is, there is the science part of the book in which you delve into the biological ecosystem aspects with reference to the leopard. At the same time, you have aspects related to conservation, the bureaucratic challenges, and also the challenges which a conservationist faces, or in terms generally in terms of conservation of the environment, which you face when you work on the field. Now, in the type of ecosystem aspects, apart from leopard biology, you get important points on what are the different organisms, what are the different animals with which leopard shares the environments. You know, being a mesocarnivore, not a carnivore as large as the lion or the tiger, leopard is something which brings balance to your ecosystem by having so many species of organisms as its own prey. It has the capacity to hunt even smaller organisms like squirrels. At the same time, it can take down even larger organisms in certain cases which are even much heavier than them, like the chinkara, for example. Now, the second part of the book is about the different stories of conservation which the author has experienced. You know, you have interesting stories on setting up camera traps, how difficult it is to take your camera traps into the wild, and even if you set up camera traps, how wild animals, some either intentionally because of curiosity or unintentionally, could damage those camera traps. Now, not just camera traps used for measuring a range of a leopard or the leopard population in an area for a sample size, but indirectly, camera traps can also become an important source for identifying poachers, or in certain cases, trying to monitor not just leopards, but also other wild animals' behavior. Now, when it comes to the second segment, he talks about how, even if you've collated so much of data, how difficult it is to cross the bureaucratic hurdles for the establishment of a wildlife sanctuary. He writes in detail about the establishment of a particular sanctuary, so many levels, how with a change in government or with a change in officers, you need to convince a lot of people to get things done, and the volume of evidence which is required. Not just this, you get interesting stories on his follow-up with reference to leopards using the radio collars. You know, there is an unfortunate incident too, in which a leopard which he had followed for quite some time ends up getting poisoned. But apart from that, the usage of radio collars throws incredible light on the character of leopards. And before we go on to the character of leopards, I'd like to read a very small paragraph from this page number 134. This kind of indicates how diverse leopards are. It tries to capture the entire essence of the book. It's about his own experience using radio collars for two leopards. The passage reads like this: the two male leopards, a radio collar, provided very insightful information. One was a large male in a wildlife sanctuary who moved around both during the day and the night. Another was a young male that was in a highly human-dominated landscape and stayed put in a small hillock the entire day and moved into villages almost every night. His home range was only about 10.5 square kilometers. Astonishingly, it was 14 times smaller than Benki. Benki is his favorite leopard. Benki is 141 square kilometers. He sourced his fruit from a much smaller area, while Benki, who was in a near natural settings, had to walk, climb, and struggle a lot more to survive. It was clear that their daily movement patterns and home ranges varied depending on where they survived, in a large forest or in small forests surrounded by human habitations. There were some indicators, such as the number of instances of conflicts, that leopards are better off when they are in near natural settings than in largely human dense areas. To build upon this, there is this conception that leopards are animals which can coexist with human beings even in urban settings. The author does write quite a lot about that particular topic, but based on his own research and conclusion, we understand yes, leopards can coexist with human beings when it comes to urban environment, but that is mostly transitional. It is simply impossible or simply not probable to find a leopard living in the center of the city. It simply doesn't happen because its natural food resources or its natural hiding environment is not there. But it is possible that leopards might leopards might definitely live when apart from urban environments into the rural areas. So the documentation of leopards, even through radio collaring or his own research, indicates that the interaction with human beings is predominantly in rural areas, and most importantly, they do not serve as permanent settlements for leopards, but only as zones of transition when leopards move from a densely forested isolated patch to a densely forested isolated patch. The sugarcane plantations or an agricultural field might only be used as a transition rather than a permanent settlement, because at the end of the day, it is not a natural habitat in which a leopard can thrive. Apart from this, the author tries to understand the reasons for the increase in man-animal conflicts. He talks about how difficult it is to sample a particular leopard population in an area, and his own projections and approximations that we might be having close to 20,000 leopards in India, and also his brief but deadly encounter in Rainbow School where he was quite fatally injured. Considering the instances, it was really surprising that the author survived the attack and was still able to put the entire incident into picture. So this is one important book which you need to learn, not just for understanding leopards, but the entire gamut of the circles associated with conservation and the different type of stakeholders who are involved. We have farmers, we have wildlife conservationists, we have the governments, and we have the ecosystem itself. So that's it for today's review. Meet you in the next episode soon. Bye for now.